Hey everybody. Our second lesson for this week is on how we model addition of integers on the number line. It's going to connect to what we did in the last video with our additive inverse, where if we add opposites, it's equal to 0. But now we're just pushing it up a notch, or kicking it up a notch, and thinking about adding integers beyond opposites. So let's think about this opening activity. It says, suppose you received $10 from your grandmother for your birthday. You spent $4 on snacks. Using addition, how would you write an equation to represent the situation? Okay, so the first thing I want to note is that we're talking about addition. So this has to be an addition problem with the plus sign. If I receive $10 from my grandmother and I spend 4, how could I write this as an addition problem? Well, if I'm starting with 10 and then I spend $4, that's not a positive number, right? Because if you spend money, it's taking it away. So I'm actually going to add -4, and I need to find my solution. Now this next question says, how would you model that equation on a number line to show your answer? Well, if I think about the last lesson, what I did was I counted up to 10, because that's a positive number, so I count up to 10, right? And then, because this is a negative number, I count down 4, starting a new little row. And then I see where I end is $6. Well, what we're doing today isn't that much different, except our notation is going to look a little different. And we're choosing this notation because this is the way that math textbooks and the PSSA and future math courses will show addition on the number line. So let's take a look at our next example. If you haven't already, these notes are available in Schoology. You can split the screen so that you're writing along with us, or writing along with me as I go through the video. All right, so example 1 is asking us to model -2 plus 3 using a number line. And I'm going to walk through this step by step. If I have -2 plus 3, the first thing that I do is place the tail of my arrow on 0. If we look down here, my arrow is always going to start at 0. The first step always begins at 0. Okay? The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to draw 2 units to the left of 0. So I'm going 2 units over, 1, 2, and stop at -2. The direction of the arrow is to the left, since you are counting down from 0, right? When we count down, we move left. Now we're going to start the next arrow at the end of the first arrow, or at -2. This is where some students make their mistake. They go back to 0. That's not what we're doing, okay? We start where the last arrow ended, and that's at -2. Then the second arrow, I'm going to draw 3 arrows or units to the right, since you are counting up from 2, right? We're counting up 3 units. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 units. And if you need to, you can draw a little line down to the whole number where you end, and we're stopping at 1. Okay, I've already done step F where we circle the number, and that's just helpful for us so that we can make sure we write our answer. Part G says repeat the process from parts A through F for the expression 3 plus -2. So our numbers are the same, but they're in a different order. Let's see if we get the same answer. So I'm going to start at 0, and now because it's +3, I'm going to count up 3 units and end at 3. And then because this number is negative, that means I have to count down or to the left 2 units. 1, 2. Draw a little line down and circle, and I find my answer to be 1. Okay, moving on down. The next question says, what can you say about the sum of -2 plus 3 and 3 plus -2? What do we notice about those sums? They're both equal to +1. So the ultimate question is, does order matter when adding numbers? Why or why not? Well, we proved why it doesn't matter, because they both equal the same thing. And if you remember, this is called the commutative property. Okay? going to go back in time to our last video and talk about absolute value really, really fast. So A says, how does absolute value determine the arrow length for -2? Well, if absolute value is the distance from 0 to a number, then that means 0 to -2, the absolute value of -2 is equal to 1, 2 spaces. Okay. The next thing says, how does the absolute value determine the arrow length for 3? So if I have the absolute value of 3, how does the arrow length show that? Well, if I start at 0 and I go to 3, that's 1, 2, 3 spaces. The absolute value of 3 is 3. So the next question is a thinking question, and there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer here. It says, describe how the absolute value helps you represent -10 on a number line. So if the absolute value of -10, right, if I wanted to find the absolute value, I would count the spaces. And it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spaces. So the absolute value helps us represent -10 on the number line because the absolute value tells us how many spaces to go to the left of 0. All right, so on your own, I want you to take a second to try to do A. Pause the video. Give yourself a second to try to figure this out and come back on to see your answer. All right, so I'm going to start at 0, and my first add-in says -6, so I'm going to go to the left 6 units. My next add-in is +4, so I start at -6, and because it's +4, I move to the right 4 spaces. I draw a little line down and circle my answer. The answer to -6 plus 4 is -2. The next question says 3 plus -8. Give yourself a second to try this on your own on a number line, and then check your answer with me. We're going to start at 0, and our first add-in is +3, so I'm going to count up 3 units. The next thing I'm going to do is start the next arrow at +3, but now because this is -8, I'm going to count down 8 spaces. And draw a little line down and circle this guy. The answer to 3 plus -8 is equal to -5. Okay, that's our lesson for today. You're going to have a little activity to do on top of these notes, or in addition to these notes, excuse me. And we'll talk about this when we return to class next week, or this week if you're a B student. Thanks, everybody.